All right, I'll echo what Steve said. Thanks to everyone for coming out today. Been a pretty amazing day, to say the least. Pretty good for a program that some said had lost a lot of momentum after the Clemson game. So rumors of our demise were greatly exaggerated, to say the least. Obviously, there's ebbs and flows throughout recruiting, and the biggest thing is to just stay the course, and we certainly did throughout this process. To me, this day with a lot of these guys has been, 2 years in the making. I knew when I got hired in December of 2020. I mean, we worked really, really hard on the class of 21, or excuse me, the class of 2022, and but we were certainly behind the eight ball in a lot of ways when I got hired, because we hadn't spent as much time, and those prospects that are freshmen in colleges now really didn't know us. So we put a lot of effort into last year's signing class, but these guys that signed today, guys like Montague Rames and guys like Marquis Anderson and guys like Xavier McLeod, guys from here in the state of South Carolina, those are guys that from day one, we started recruiting heavily when I first got here, and it's great to see that come to fruition today. It's some great young men that we signed, but they come from great families, and it's a great group of people that we just added to our football program. I was in so many of these players' homes over the last few weeks, and told them all that this class we're signing, I'm really excited about their potential and ability as players, but I'm even more excited about the kind of people they are, the families they come from. Some great families in this group, without a doubt. From that standpoint, it's a great group. It's 9 states, represented. We signed 7, I believe, from the state of South Carolina. We always want to start here in this state. If you look at the rankings of the top players in South Carolina, we signed 3 of the top 4 in the state of South Carolina, 3 of the top 4 players in the state of South Carolina, which is huge. I say it all the time. That's how we got this program to a high level where we were playing for the SEC championship. It was doing it by keeping the best players in South Carolina at home. And, we did that for the most part this year as well. 6 young men that are national All-Americans that are playing in national All-Star games. 12 of these guys are multi-sport athletes. They're good students. We have 8 guys at well over a 3.0 GPA. We've got a graduate of Yale, in this recruiting class as well. So certainly bringing in great students also, which I'm excited about, and certainly we're not done. I mean, there's a lot of work still to do with the class that we're putting together right now. There's some young men that haven't made decisions yet that we're still recruiting, and that's in the high school ranks. That's in the transfer portal as well. And then there's also guys, I'm sure, that don't sign today that are waiting to make decisions in February that a lot of people know, one in particular who I'm referring to, and then there's some other ones out there as well. So we're not done, but this is a fantastic start to this year's recruiting class, and there's so many people that have put a lot of work into this. It's such a team effort from the people in this building, specifically the ones that head up recruiting for us: Taylor Edwards, Drew Hickson, Jessica Jackson, Jasmine Moses. Great article on them yesterday, by the way, Emily. But those people put so much work into it as well. So thanks to them, and then thanks to everybody in our football facility. When we host recruits and when we have a recruiting weekend, even if it's just somebody coming for a few hours or it's somebody that's coming on an official visit to spend 48 hours, it is all hands on deck with every single person in this building. So Joe's sitting in here. So Joe in video, and every department in this program is involved when a high school prospect and their family comes on campus, and it's a lot of time as well. So we're certainly grateful for them. And then the people outside this building as well. Justin Light and the staff over in the Doty Academic Center for what they do with our guys from an academic standpoint on visits. When a high school prospect comes and we want them to talk academics because we've got amazing academics here, they spend time with everyone in the Doty Academic Center, and those guys to on and on, golf carts that we use for tours of campus, and hotels that we use for official visits, and restaurants, and on and on and on. So I could be up here all day thanking people, but there's a lot of people that put in a lot of time and effort into this, and we're appreciative of them. Like I said, we are not done yet, but we're off to a great start without a doubt, and we got better as a program for sure with these young men and their families today, on and off the field. So with that, any questions from a recruiting standpoint, football standpoint? I guess I won't talk to you guys till Jacksonville, so fire away with what you got.
Shane, I don't know if you know right away, but right at ballpark figure, do you know how many of these guys will enroll early or be here for spring, that kind of thing?
Got it right here in front of me, David. We have of the ones that we can talk about right now, there's 14 that'll be here for spring practice, and 15 that'll be here for spring practice, and then with some other guys that still have some decisions to make in different situations, could have more. But that's going to be huge because we do lose so many off this year's team. Just from a spring practice standpoint, to be able to get a lot of these guys in here. A couple offensive linemen, some defensive backs, tight ends, which will be huge. If we didn't have any tight ends coming, we wouldn't be able to practice during the spring from a depth standpoint. So thank God we got some tight ends that'll be here for spring practice.
Since you alluded to the Yale offensive lineman, which of those transfer guys are you permitted to speak to us about right now?
I believe I'm allowed to talk about let me see. I'm allowed to talk about Nick. So I'm begging forgiveness if I screw any of this up. I'm allowed to talk about Nick from Yale. I'm allowed to talk about Mario from Newberry. I'm allowed to talk about Nick from Florida. And I believe I'm allowed to talk about, so if I can, I'm sorry, we're going to talk about Trey from Arkansas. So,
and I'm sure we can ask questions about them specifically later, but Grayson Howard, the high school level guys, seem to be like your kind of quarterback, like for lack of a better way to describe his personality.
Yes.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, Grayson Howard is unbelievable. When I told you guys last week about a text message that I got from a recruit saying we want people in this program that will die for this university, that was Pup as well. And he's unbelievable. And just his personality, obviously his ability as a player speaks for itself, but when you get to know him, like, you guys are going to love him as you get to know him also. I mean, he's just got a great personality. He's so positive all the time, competitive, mature, businesslike. I mean, we were in his house a couple Sundays ago and just so impressed with him the more and more I'm around him, and he did a great job of recruiting these other guys. And he was certainly a guy that we had a lot of guys that got this class going, Hale, but just the momentum that he created because he is such a national recruit. He turned down so many great programs to come here was a huge pickup for us, and he's going to make our program better from day one. In fact, he's already here right now. Like, he's able to practice with us this week because of, I don't even know exactly what the rule is, but because of what he's been able to get done in school already, and then what he was able to get done with the admissions process and everything here, he's cleared and good to go. So he actually practiced with us yesterday and practiced with us today, which tells you everything you need to know about the guy. Like, most kids would be at home, like, celebrating signing day and having parties and all that. He wanted to come up here and practice. So he's awesome.
Coach, with Big Tree coming back in last night after decommitting, just what did the last week look like for you guys trying to pull him back in, and what kind of went into that decision to decommit and then to come back in yesterday?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for him. We had a great visit, Emily, on the Sunday that some of the news came out about Marshawn and his tweet and whatever it was. We were actually in Tree's home that day and had a great visit with him. It was awesome, like we always do. Pup's a great personality. Tree's a great personality. You guys are really going to enjoy getting to know them both. And then the next day, I was in Jacksonville, Florida, and going to see, I think, Connor Cox that day. And then we met with Nick Elksness. But Tree reached out, that he was just – it was a lot coming at him. Obviously, he and Marshawn had gone to the same high school, and you know, Tree's mom was out of the country that day. She was traveling back that week. And I think there was just a lot, you know, not confusion, but just a lot, you know, not that he and Marshawn were classmates, but there was a familiarity because they went to the same high school. So I think it was just a lot for him. But it wasn't like we just wore him out. I mean, I gave him some space, and I talked to him on that Monday and just kind of talked about the fact that he chose South Carolina for a lot of reasons. And you know, whether Marshawn was here or not, Marshawn was probably going to be gone after the 23 season anyway. So let's not base your decision based on getting to play with a guy or not get to play with a guy for, 6 months when he gets here in the summertime. And he was great. It wasn't like the communication never shut off. We kept, you know, open communication, was just honest with him and really dealt with what was reality, and that was the reasons he chose South Carolina. And you know, we started talking a lot more, which today Wednesday, we started talking a lot more on, you know, Sunday, Monday, and then into today as well. I may or may not have FaceTimed with him on Monday night and gone out in the front yard of my house and climbed another tree while I was on the phone with him just to prove a point. So I do have a screenshot of that one, Hale. I know y'all think my one at the beach is fake, but I did screenshot that one also. But he's a great kid, and excited that he's back with us for good.
Hey, Coach, a little bit of a two-parter with this one, but obviously Trey Knox coming in from Arkansas. First part is, do you know if there's plans to bring other players from the Razorbacks through the transfer portal? And then also, I guess, what kind of role – I know he's new, but what kind of role will Dow Loggins have, I guess, with any of the lingering recruits that remain?
Lingering recruits that we've been recruiting that aren't out there? Like guys that didn't sign with us today, you mean? Yeah. First of all, on Trey, excited about him. Great player. Another great family. You know, I asked Trey the first time I talked to him on the phone. Me and Coach Stepp and Dow were actually down in Florida, and he had gone in the portal, and we talked on the phone that night. And you know, he expressed to me that one of the primary reasons, if not the primary reason, he chose Arkansas was because of his relationship with Justin Stepp, because Justin was the receivers coach that recruited Trey to Arkansas, and then obviously he had developed a great relationship with Dow coaching him. And, you know, in regards to other players, no, I'm not in the habit of like trying to poach players from other programs and things like that. Now, if somebody were to go in the transfer portal, that's one thing. But no, we're not actively pursuing anybody else that's in the portal from Arkansas, I should say. And then Dow will be heavily involved with all those guys. We're not able to get back on the road. Well, the first weekend in January is a weekend where if we wanted to bring in potential transfers onto campus to visit, we can. So there may be some guys that come in that weekend, which probably will. Dow will be involved with that. And then the following week is when we're able to go back out on the road recruiting for the rest of January. So he'll be on the road every single day, like all of us will be in the month of January, finishing up this recruiting class and getting a head start on next year as well.
You mentioned Mario Anderson a second ago. What kind of impressed you about him in the process of recruiting him from a D2 school? What stands out about him as a running back?
Well, he's a Division II All-American, and you know, some people say, well, that's not the SEC. Well, you know what? We took Carlins Platel from Assumption College, and people were probably like, what are you taking a guy from Assumption College for? Well, he's still playing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's why. And it was pointed out to me the other day, if you ask some of the stars from the Clemson game were transfers from Wingate, ETSU, and James Madison as well. Now the FCS is a little bit different, but what stood out to me than Division II, but what Newberry plays really good football. That's really good level of competition that he was playing against. He's an All-American. I guess he's up for the Player of the Year, if I'm not mistaken, for the whole country. You watch his tape, it's just a lot of long plays when you turn on the tape. And then just his story of, you know, growing up in Charleston and going to Newberry and what he's done since he's been there and getting to know him. He came out to practice last Friday. He was out here at practice and spent some time with us and enjoyed getting to know him. And I think the biggest thing is he's a productive running back with a lot of experience, and a lot of production as well during his time in college. And he's somebody that, we had on our radar. I mean, he's right up the road, so obviously you're going to hear about, this running back from Newberry and everything that he's accomplishing as well, just following local sports and things like that. So we were aware of him. And then when he went in the portal and I really dove in and watched him even more, it stood out. He jumped off the tape. And then Taylor Edwards had Clayton White watch it from a defensive perspective. Pete Limbo watch it just from an overall team's perspective. Watch his tape, and both those guys were like, this guy's a heck of a running back, no matter what level he's coming from. So we're excited to get him in here, and it's also a position that you guys know there's not a lot of depth in right now. With one having left in the portal, CBS being a super senior. Also, we got to increase the depth in that room for sure.
Is the tree screenshot going to ever see the light of day?
I don't know. Tree's got it. It's hard to tell. I sent it to Tree. I screenshotted it and sent it to him as we were FaceTiming just so he wouldn't forget me. It's kind of hard to tell because it's dark and it's at night, Colin, but you can kind of see my face with tree branches behind me. And it wasn't a big tree in my yard. It was about the height of that, but it was still a tree that I climbed.
It would have been impressive if it was a bigger tree. But
Exactly.
This class was so heavily focused on the defensive and offensive line.
Yes.
Why was that important to you, and how do you feel like you guys did bringing in some of your top targets?
Yeah, really good. Well, first of all, we knew it was going to be important that's an older group on the defensive line, and it was a position, honestly, Colin, that we really wanted to attack last year on the O-line and D-line, and we brought in Grayson Maines and Ryan Brubaker and Kason Henry offensively, and then defensively last year with DeAndre Martin and Felix Hickson and Demetrius Watson and I think that's it, right? I feel like I'm missing somebody. Those guys. So we wanted to hit it last year. And then this year, same thing, because we knew defensively that Zach was probably leaving for the draft anyway. MJ Webb's an older guy. You got older guys behind them with Tonka and Boogie Huntley. And then offensively with Eric Douglas, Wanham, Gwynn, all Hank Manos, Wyatt Campbell, all those being older guys. That room gets really empty pretty quickly. So that was a major position for us, and really excited about the group that we got coming in from an offensive standpoint with Nick from Yale, and just the experience and toughness that he brings. I didn't realize this, but at Yale, on sports teams, you don't have multiple captains. You have one. And so, here, for example, our captains for this year's team, as voted on by the teammates, were Zach Pickens, Spencer Rattler, Brad Johnson, Eric Douglas, and Javon Gwynn. We had 5 because they had the 5 highest votes by far. At Yale, you just pick one, and it's the one guy that has the most votes, and he is the captain of the Yale football team forever. And that was Nick, which is pretty awesome. So just that leadership, and then Marquis Anderson, what a great player, what a big recruiting battle that was for us to win, for sure. And then who else? Tree and Trevon Ball and Jatavius Shivers. Those guys are all great players. And then on the defensive line, Xavier McLeod from Huron State, another huge recruiting battle that we had to win against some of the best teams in the country. And whatnot. So those guys, and then the other, hopefully defensive lineman to come, Elijah Davis, a junior college lineman that's going to give us immediate help. I remember when I first got hired here 2 years ago, I was sitting in the room. I think Des Kitchings was still here as our running backs coach, and we were watching Elijah's high school tape. And, knew that he may end up having to go a roundabout way to get here, but it was whatever we got to do to get this kid back here in 2 years, let's do it. And thank God, we did. And then Montague Rames, big recruiting battle we won in state. And the guy with Gilbert gone and whatnot gives us immediate depth and whatnot, and Desmond from up in Maryland. It's just a great group of linemen, and credit those coaches and our whole staff for getting those guys here, because if you look at who we signed, we had to win some major recruiting battles against some major programs to get those guys here.
Shane, you mentioned just excitement for having some tight ends, actually. on the field at practice in the spring. What can you tell us just about that group and their mix of skill sets as far as what they bring, pass catching, blocking, things like that?
Yeah, no, it's a really good group. Connor Cox, and I guess all those guys will be here in the springtime. But Connor Cox is a young man from Jacksonville that we really liked. He, that tight end room. We went into it saying we probably need to sign 2 tight ends in this year's class, and then obviously our circumstances changed pretty quickly in the last 2 weeks where we need to sign a lot more than 2, and we were able to do that. So Connor Cox, bigger body, Bowles School in Jacksonville, great program. Spent a lot of time with him throughout the recruiting process, and gives you a bigger body that can go in there and be an inline blocker as well. Reed McKeska, that from out in Texas, Reed visited here in the springtime and had a great visit, and took him a little bit of time to figure out that this was the place for him. He thought 1 or 2 other places might be, but they weren't. But Reed's a really good athlete, really good ball skills that will help immediately. Nick Elksness from Florida. We actually, when I was coaching at Oklahoma, we had Nick in our camp, and I remember I flew to Jacksonville twice to go visit his high school because I really liked him as a tight end when I was coaching at Oklahoma. We ended up not signing a tight end in that recruiting class, if I'm not mistaken, or that may have been the year I left to come here. I can't remember, but he was in our camp that summer, and we really liked him in camp. And then he and his dad flew out to Norman, worked out one day. And then he ended up committing, I think, to Penn State, and then Florida offered him, and he went to Florida. But Nick's somebody that I'm very familiar with. Mark Brunell, the former NFL quarterback, Coach Brunell was his high school coach in Jacksonville, and always thought highly of him. Talked to Dan Mullen about him when Nick went in the portal, and he comes, he's very well thought of by a lot of people. He'll bring us some athleticism and size. And then, Trey Knox, obviously a guy that came to Arkansas as a receiver, and now he's up to, 240 pounds as a really athletic tight end. So all those guys we're excited about. Cam Sandlin is somebody that we signed that was a high school quarterback that gives you some flexibility, more of a kind of an H-back type guy, can do some different things. And, we may or may not be done in that room also, because some of those guys are older guys as well. And to me, I think you guys are meeting with Pete tomorrow. Pete will tell you can never have too many tight end body types from a special team standpoint as well. That's critical.
I got 2 on the team for you. Is there any possibility for Marshawn to return to the team?
I'm going to talk about the guys that are on our team right now, Phil. So I think every situation is different, and I haven't talked to Marshawn in 2 weeks. Like I said, I'm worried about the guys that are here right now.
And what's going on with your right tackle position since Dylan has moved on?
Right tackle position, we got a lot of guys that are spending time over there right now. Kason Henry's a young guy that we're excited about. Tyshawn Wanamaker's spent a lot of time playing tackle. I mean, Tyshawn finished the season last year as the tackle, so you guys have heard me say it before. I mean, we want offensive linemen that have some position flexibility, guard, tackle, center guard, whatever it may be. So we got a lot of guys that we're working, out there as well, and excited about them. I mean, there's some really good young offensive linemen that we have here in this program, and what an opportunity for some of these guys to play a more meaningful role in this bowl game against a really good D-line from Notre Dame.
2 for you, real quick one. With Pup Howard, with him practicing now, does that keep him from playing in the All-Star game?
It's a good question. I don't believe so, because we talked about that. I don't think anything has changed. We talked about that when we were in his home, him playing in that All-Star game and working through that, but I don't believe so.
And if you don't mind speaking to McLeod and Anderson, why were they so highly recruited? What do you see in their abilities that you think will make them be able to contribute early?
I think athleticism, for one. 2 great programs, Dorman and Coach Curtis, and Camden and Coach Rimpf, and they do it the right way. I remember watching Xavier play in the state championship game 2021 here in Columbia. Well, I stood out there and I watched him play, and he's just a big guy that moves well for his size, very light on his feet, athletic. He for a guy that's, whatever we're listing him at weight-wise, he doesn't look it. I mean, he looks lighter than that, carries his weight very well, and just a twitchy, athletic guy, reason he had so many people after him. And then Marquis, great young man and great family, just like Xavier McLeod. And then I think the thing with Marquis, just same thing, the athleticism, the physicality that he plays with, the edge that he plays with, but then just the athleticism that he shows in the run game and the pass game as well. I mean, both those guys could have gone anywhere in the country, and rightfully so, because they're really, really talented.
Shane, a couple for you. What are the status of Lavoisier Carroll and Jalen Brooks?
Lavoisier Carroll is injured right now, still on the team. Won't be able to play in the bowl game. Hopefully we'll be good to go for spring practice, and he's still out here every day. He's here with us each and every day. Jalen Brooks, same thing. He's dealing with a little bit of an off-the-field issue right now. He's still practicing with us, David, and he'll be with us, next week in Jacksonville.
Do you think he'll be able to play?
To be determined.
And also, any more opt-outs or injuries that you know of at this point?
No, I'm trying to think of last time I talked to y'all. I don't think so. Let's see. Devontae Reed put his thing out. Devontae Reed won't play. He decided he didn't want to make the trip to Jacksonville, so he's not with us. And I think everybody else since last is here. The ones we were initially talked about. I don't think I'm missing anybody, am I? Yeah. Gilbert we knew about. Wanham put his thing out, and then Devontae, yeah.
Going back to something you said earlier, did you say you interviewed Dan Mullen? Is that accurate?
See what you did there. No.
Just kidding.
No, but our families are friends, so I was weird. My wife and kids were with Dan's wife and kids the Saturday of the SEC championship game, so I was waiting for you guys to do your research on that one and see them over. I think they were at Lake Oconee, where Dan and his family have a lake house along with my parents, and know that they were like ice skating together and things like that. That would have broke Twitter if that had come out as well. But I talked to Dan. No, did not interview Dan. Dan's very happy doing what he's doing right now, I think.
Well, speaking of that Lake Oconee area, Jalen Kilgore and Braswell.
Yes.
Can you speak to what those two guys will add to y'all?
Yeah, I think it's pretty awesome that you're signing two guys from that area as well. For Putnam County is the county that so many college coaches have lake homes on, from Kirby to Dan Mullen to my parents, and on and on and on. It was always known as in a lot of ways to me, that was just where the lake was. Well, now it's where Jalen Kilgore is from. He's from Putnam County High School, but he's another one. Athletic family, brother's a college football player at Tennessee Tech, and just a really, really talented player. Give Torian great credit, and all of our recruiting staff. You guys know us. We're not one of those programs that sits around and waits for somebody else to offer somebody to justify it. If we think a guy's good enough to play, we get on him early. And Jalen was one that we got on early, and then after that, a lot of schools got on him. He took an official visit to Oklahoma, and I know Clemson was on him, and great family as well. He's a really, really good football player. Haley, he's one of those guys. Every Friday, or every Saturday morning after his games, he would send me a link to his highlights from the night before, and it was every week doing something different. Playing quarterback, playing defensive back, returning punts, punting, whatever it may be. I mean, he does it all. So excited about what he's going to bring to the table. He'll be one that's going to be here in January, so he'll be able to go through spring practice and try and help us from day one. And then Braswell, same thing. Call him DJ, but DJ Braswell, really talented running back. He won't be here for spring practice, but we'll give him an opportunity to get going once he gets here. But tough, hard-nosed runner and downhill runner as well. Somebody that we had liked all along during the recruiting process. And a lot of these guys, give them credit. I talked earlier about how it's been a process to get these guys, to recruit these guys over the last couple of years. So many of them, Jalen and DJ both, were guys that committed to us in the summertime or early, and then stayed committed as well, which you don't see that. You see a lot of guys nowadays, they make couple different decisions, but C.J. Adams committed early. Judge Collier committed early. Cameron Upshaw committed early. Jalen Kilgore. Elijah Davis was a battle to the end. Pup Howard was committed before the season. Marquis was committed before the season. Montague was committed before the season. And Desmond was committed before the season. Connor Cox, Reed was a battle. Xavier McLeod was a battle. And then, Zabari Sandy committed before the season. Shivers committed before the season. Trevon Ball before the season. Tree, we talked about him. Can Samlin before the season. Kelton Henderson before the season. And then Tyshawn Russell, somebody here at the last second. So, a lot of these guys made their decisions and knew it was the right decision and stayed with us throughout. And when I talk about thanks as well, a lot of that goes to our fans also for the home field environment. I know I come in here every Tuesdays in the season on those press conferences and talk about we need a great home field environment this Saturday because we got a lot of recruits here. Well, it's these guys that were here on so many of them, and that home field environment that we created across the street went a long way towards these guys, bless you, these guys becoming Gamecocks as well. So thanks to our fans.
You mentioned Torian Gray there and also a couple of those defensive backs. What do you really like about that group you've brought in and kind of the way you're stacking talent there with Eamon Murray and DQ also playing a lot this year as true freshmen? Yeah,
Torian does a great job back there coaching them and recruiting them. I like the group that we got in because I think they have position flexibility as well. Where you talk about where those guys are going to start. Are they a corner? Are they a safety? Are they a nickel? A lot of these guys that we signed today, I think could be any of the three, which is what you're always looking for. We're doing that a little bit with guys this year. I mean, you guys watch this. DQ Smith's been a nickel. He's also been a safety. Kawan Banks has been a corner. He's been a safety. But the guys that we signed today, one, I love their size and their length because, you may get beat. You're going to get beat at times as a defensive back. But if you have length, like wingspan, long arms, height, you can make up for getting beat pretty quickly. That's one thing I love about, Judge Collier. He's just so long. And you can say that about a lot of these defensive backs that we signed. So love their length, love their athleticism, and love the position flexibility that they can play multiple spots for us back there in the secondary.
Shane, two for you, but with Jordan Strawn, are you guys applying for a waiver potentially to get another year?
We're trying to get Jordan Strawn back and optimistic that we will certainly be able to.
And I know Coach Adkins was out on the road recruiting for you guys this month. What's his role look like for the bowl game and maybe into the future?
Yeah, right now he's back. It's the same role that he had, Colin, throughout the season. He stepped away for a little bit from a health standpoint, came back and was involved in the program throughout the rest of the season. Lonnie Teasley stepped up and did a great job with the offensive line along with Ad as the year went on. And right now it's kind of status quo as we go through bowl prep. They're both out there working hard and working hard in the building. And then as we get through the season and figure out exact roles for 2023, we will, but I want Coach Atkins back here on our staff, and I want Lonnie Teasley back here on our staff. We got really good coaches. I want all these guys back, after the bowl game.
Shane, with Tyshawn Russell, he's been kind of a late riser. I think you guys were his first Power 5 offer. Just, what do you think has made this recruiting staff so good at kind of identifying those late risers? Because you had that with Nick and DQ as well, and what stood out to you that made you guys so confident in offering him?
No, I'm glad you said that. I agree. One, just willing to turn over every stone to try and find prospects and just watch tape and trust the tape and not say, well, I like this guy, but he doesn't have any offers. So next we look at it and really don't care. And I remember watching his tape. It was, during the season on Friday mornings during the season, all I do is just watch recruiting tape when I come in Friday mornings, early afternoon before we go get ready with our players. And it was late in the season, probably late October maybe, that I first saw Tyshawn's tape and found out that he didn't really have any offers. And I told him this. He was in my office Sunday, and I told him and his parents this, like, we offered you, and I really was scared because we'll compete against anybody, but I assumed once we offered you, you'd end up having 40 offers and before it was all said and done, and he didn't. And I can't speak for other schools, but I'm glad he's a Gamecock. And, Pete went up there multiple times. Justin was at his state championship games. Justin went back and watched him play basketball last week. And I think he scored 4 touchdowns in his state championship game, for a really, really, really good program up in Pennsylvania. So he's got a lot of, and I mean this as a compliment, he's got a lot of Juice Wells qualities in him. Juice Wells hosted him last weekend, which that was a story in itself, Juice and Tyshawn, because they are very similar in a lot of ways. I talked about Juice having a lot of dog in him. You guys have probably heard me say that before. And Tyshawn, I think, is the same way. He's just a really good football player. And I think part of the reason he maybe didn't have as many offers is because he really wasn't a receiver full-time until this year. He's a really, really talented defensive back, and that was where he was spending the majority of his time. And then he moved over to offense this year and had a more active role on offense, but he's also on a team that has some other highly recruited receivers on it. So not that he was an afterthought, because he wasn't. He caught 4 touchdowns, but there's some heavily recruited receivers on that team already, and he was just kind of a late guy coming to the receiver position. But he's just a guy that's a really, really good football player and is very, very grateful for the opportunity he has here.
2 more. You mentioned Juice. Can you just
You got
share
like
enough-
6 in today, haven't you, with this whole thing? It's great. I love it.
Put a
Fire
lot of
away.
time into it, Shane. Can you speak a little more on Juice and how he's doing after his, I guess, thing, trying to get back down here for practice?
How Juice is doing?
Yeah.
He's great. He certainly had an accident coming back last week and is doing okay. He's practiced every day since he's been back. He loves football. He loves to compete. He's doing great. So practicing and full speed ahead. He'll be fine.
And obviously, Tree was the, I guess, headliner of this year's recruiting battle with Maryland. Can you speak to what it's been like going head-to-head for a lot of guys with them here this season?
With
and
them?
Previous.
I got to be careful because we're not done yet either from that standpoint. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of programs that we compete against, and it's no secret that we're very, very, very active up in that region, the DMV, because there's great players, great programs, great coaches, and we will continue to be. And so many of them, they want to play not just SEC football, but they want to play football games in front of sold-out crowds. And if they want to play football games in front of sold-out crowds and huge environments and what football is supposed to look like, they need to come here, and we certainly give them that opportunity as well. And we've had great success with young men from that area that are already here in this program and have told them great things about what we're doing here. And we'll continue to recruit, that area heavily as well. So whether it's Maryland, whether it's Penn State, whether it's Virginia Tech, Ohio State, I mean, there's a lot of programs that recruit that area, but a lot of guys that want to play SEC football, we're the closest program to them, so it's attractive to them in a lot of ways.
You mentioned a couple of times earlier that y'all aren't done with this yet. Any positions that you feel like y'all really need, or are you just trying to go pluck out some of the best guys?
I think it's the best guys. Certainly you have when you go into a recruiting cycle, just like we will with the class of 24, you have at each position like your target number of what you want to sign in that year's recruiting class. And, we wanted to sign a quarterback in this year's class. There's not a quarterback listed on this sheet, so that's a position we're still pursuing. Running back, we feel, pretty good about, but if there's a great one out there, certainly I don't think you ever turn down a great back. Honestly, John, I would say every position I could go through, other than maybe defensive back, we actually signed probably a few more, but it's hard to tell Torian to stop. Like, he just keeps going, so I'm going to have to, not just take the scholarship papers away from him where he can't send them out to guys because he'll just keep going as well. Jody's kind of the same way right now with tight ends as well. Like, at some point we have other positions as well. But there's a couple of positions, a lot of them that I would say that we still may, add if it's a great player. We love where we are right now, but, you always are planning ahead for attrition as well. And I hope we don't have anybody else leave our program, but you're always prepared for that and trying to stay one step ahead also if you have attrition in your own program.
Shane, going back to last year with the Dukes Mayo, do you remember what day it was, about how far it was for the game where you really took a serious look at to carry on playing QB? I mean, it wasn't like 2 weeks, or was it longer?
No, it was longer, which still blows my mind that it was able to be kept quiet, if you will, for so long. No, it was one of those, David, that I remember coming back off the road recruiting, which would have been about the second week of December, because signing day was a week earlier last year. So it would have been like the middle of December when we really started bowl practices, and talking to Sad, okay, what are we going to do at quarterback? Luke's hurt and Jason Brown's transferred. And I remember, we talked in that offensive staff room about wanting to get DK a small package and just get him some plays. And we started with that, and then it just continued to just grow, where it was, okay, we may use him for 10 plays in this game, to where it went to we may use him for 25, to where it went he's going to basically be out there for the majority of the time along with Zeb. And it wasn't like he was still working at receiver. It wasn't like he took every play in practice at quarterback along with Zeb, but it was a lot of it. And we had our practices here, and we didn't have a lot of people out there watching, I guess. And then our practices in Charlotte, and tried to be very, discreet, not to try and be a jerk to y'all when y'all were out there watching, but just, what y'all see at practice. North Carolina was practicing like a mile down the road, I think, in Charlotte as well. So that's what it was, and credit to the team and credit to DK for embracing that role and what he was able to do that day also. All right. Feinbaum at 5. Tune in. And Limbo tomorrow, huh? All right. I'm just the warm-up act for Limbo, so y'all enjoy. Thank you, guys. I was going to say Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you guys, and appreciate all you do covering us throughout the year as well. So travel safe to Florida.